that this issue has not gotten on people's radar.
Right, no one's talking about it.
It's pretty amazing. If you don't know what's going on in Nigeria, your media sources suck. You are in a bubble. Not, and again, I'm not a Christian, but they are systematically killing the Christians in Nigeria. They've killed over 100,000 since 2009. They've burned 18,000 churches. This is so much more. These are their Islamists, Boko Haram. This is so much more of a genocide attempt than what is going on in Gaza. They are literally attempting to wipe out the Christian population of an entire country. Where are the kids protesting this?
Thank you. Thank you. So no one will talk about it, so thank you.
Absolutely.
It's Africa. That's why no one's talking about it, and they should be. You can't read about it in mainstream media. It's sad, so thank you for bringing it up.
Well, because the Jews aren't involved. That's why. It's the Christians and the Muslims. Who cares? It's just...
So, get this. Nigeria's vice president goes to the UN, right? Gives this big, passionate speech defending Palestine. And then, swiftly, something really weird starts happening on social media in Nigeria. All of a sudden, Western influencers, advocacy groups, they start blasting these stories everywhere. Stories about Muslims systematically killing Christians all over Nigeria. The narrative was simple and scary. It's a religious genocide, and the world have to step in now. But here's what they are not telling you. While they are all screaming about a religious war, foreign interests under the cover of armed militias are quietly and illegally hauling billions of dollars worth of gold, lithium, and iron ore out of Nigerian soil every single day. The media loves to call Nigeria an oil nation, but honestly, that's just scratching the surface. We are sitting on some of the world's richest mineral deposits, and you better believe foreign interest knows it. They are mining it all illegally, and they've got the perfect cover story. Oh, it's just bandits, terrorism, herdsmen violence. But think about it for a second. Why are the victims almost always farmers? Why do these attacks just happen to be concentrated in mineral-rich states like Zamfara, Plateau, and Benue? And why is our local agriculture being systematically wiped out right at the same time that big GMO corporations are trying to push their way into our markets? The answer is uncomfortable, but it's also crystal clear. This isn't about Christians versus Muslims. These guys kill Christians and they kill Muslims. The real target isn't religion. It's anyone who's standing between foreign corporations and Nigeria's resources. It's a simple playbook. Destroy the farmers, clear the land, grab the minerals, and take control of the food supply. It's the oldest colonial trick in the book, just repackaged with religious hashtags for the social media age. And here's the kicker, the part that gives the whole game away. This religious genocide story absolutely exploded online right after Nigeria took that strong stand on Palestine. Do you really think that's a coincidence? Because I don't. Today, we are going to pull back the curtain on the real agenda behind Nigeria's so-called religious war. I will show you how the timing of these campaigns lines up perfectly with Nigeria's foreign policy moves. We'll look at the mining maps they don't want you to see and uncover the agricultural takeover that's happening while they get Nigerians to fight each other. Because when you see who's really behind this violence and why they need us divided instead of united and protecting what's ours, everything will make perfect sense. This is the story they are desperate for you not to hear. Let's get into it. Okay, let's look at the timeline, because just 3 days ago, this September, Nigeria's vice president at the United Nations making waves with this fiery speech about Palestine. For months before this, the former header conflict in Nigeria were just seen as a regional African issue, barely getting a mention on the international news. Then, Nigeria's leadership takes a stand. Suddenly, it's like every evangelical organization in America and Europe woke up and discovered a Christian genocide in Nigeria. You had organizations with multi-million-dollar budgets suddenly funding these youth campaigns, painting every single violent incident as religious persecution. The timing wasn't an accident, it was a strategy. But here's the part these groups conveniently leave out of their emotional fundraising appeals. Nigeria is sitting on a mountain of mineral wealth that makes our oil look like pocket change. They are screaming about religion while totally ignoring the billions of dollars being illegally ripped from under our soil every single year. Think about it. These same Western groups that are suddenly so concerned about Nigerian Christians have been dead silent about the exploitation of our resources for decades. Where were they when our environment was being destroyed? When the communities were being forced off their land? When foreign corporations were operating like it was the Wild West? They only found their concern for human rights when Nigeria dared to have an independent foreign policy. The pattern is so obvious if you are willing to look. Whenever an African nation stands up for itself on the world stage, suddenly there's a massive international pressure campaign. When they support a cause that challenges Western interest, they become the new target for a humanitarian intervention. Nigeria's stance on Palestine just triggered the same old playbook they've used across Africa for decades. But before we get deeper into this information war, you need to understand something the media refuses to tell you. Nigeria isn't just an oil nation. What we have buried on our ground is going to shock you. I can guarantee you that. When you think of Nigeria, you probably think of oil, right? Well, what if I told you that that's exactly what foreign powers want you to think? Because while the whole world is focused on crude oil, they are sneaking something far more valuable right out from under our feet. We are sitting on some of the world's richest mineral deposits. I'm talking about gold reserves worth hundreds of billions of dollars. Lithium deposits, the stuff you need for every single smartphone and electric car batteries. Iron ore that could supply steel for entire continents. The kind of wealth that could literally transform Africa. But here's the catch. A staggering 80% of the mining in northwestern Nigeria is completely illegal. Foreign companies are working through local partners, and officials are just looking the other way. They are pulling out billions of dollars in minerals every year and paying next to nothing to the Nigerian people or the government. Just look at Zamfara State. It loses about $9 billion every single year to illegal gold smuggling. That's more than the entire GDP of many African countries. The gold gets funneled through these crazy smuggling networks all across the Sahel and ends up in the international market, while the communities whose land it came from get nothing but poisoned water and destroyed farmlands. And who protects these illegal mines? Heavily armed groups that control huge territories. These aren't just random bandits. They are organized, well-connected networks. They provide the security for the mines, tax the local people, and decide who gets in and who gets out. The maps reveal the shocking truth. Lay a map of the conflict zones in northern Nigeria over a map of the mineral deposit. It's a perfect match. Plateau State, where thousands have died in these farmer-herder clashes, it just happens to have some of our richest mineral deposits. Benue State, where farming communities are constantly under attack, it's sitting on a massive amount of iron ore. This isn't a coincidence, it's a strategy. Systematic resource extraction disguised as ethnic and religious conflict. While Nigerians are fighting each other, foreign corporations are looting the country blind. The environmental cost is devastating. Lead poisoning has killed thousands of people, including women and children. Rivers are toxic. Farmland are ruined. But you never hear about that on the international news, do you? Now, look at this map of the illegal mining sites. And now, look at this one showing the attacks on farmers. You see the pattern? Let's zoom in on Zamfara State for a second. The numbers are just staggering. Over 6,300 people killed in the last 4 years. $9 billion lost to illegal mining every year. Foreign companies operating without any consequences. You cannot tell me this is just random violence. It's a business model. The link between the mining and violence is undeniable. These armed groups aren't just picking random spots. They set up shop right on top of the most mineral-rich areas. Their camps are almost always located right next to gold mines. And when do the attacks on villagers spike? Right after the communities try to stand up and resist the illegal mining on their land. Here's how the system works. International sponsors fund these local armed groups. The groups then act as the muzzle, providing security for the illegal mining. They control access, tax locals, and violently crush anyone who gets in their way. When a community says, hey, this is our land, or asks for compensation, they get attacked. It's that brutal and that simple. And the government response just shows you what's really going on. You would think that banning mining in these areas will stop the violence, right? Wrong. When officials have tried to ban the mining, the violence actually gets worse. The death rate in Zamfara shot up by about 183% after they put a ban in place. Why? Because the ban doesn't stop the mining. It just makes it more profitable for the criminals with the guns to protect it. You can even see the scale of it from space. Satellite images show thousands of illegal mining sites scaring the landscape, many with armed camps right beside them. The environment is wrecked, whole areas stripped bare, rivers poisoned and made useless for farming. And this network goes way beyond Nigeria. The gold that's stolen from our ground gets smuggled through Niger, Mali, and Chad before it hits the world market. It's a global supply chain built on Nigerian blood and soil. The local communities, they pay the entire price and see none of the reward. They lose their land, their water is poisoned, their young men are forced to join these gangs, and their families live in constant fear. The real tragedy is that this wealth could be funding development for all of us. Instead, it's fueling a war that only enriches foreigners and their local collaborators. The people who should be benefiting from their own natural resources are being turned into victims of a conflict designed to cover up the theft. But taking our minerals is only half the story. The other half involves the food you eat every day and a plan to control it. Now, let's talk about who's actually getting attacked in this religious war. 95% of the victims are farmers. Food production has dropped by a third. We're talking about 50 billion naira in agricultural losses. This isn't about religion. This is also a war on our food supply. It's a calculated strategy to starve Nigeria into submission. The pattern is so obvious, it's sickening. The attacks on farming communities always spike during planting and harvest seasons. That's not a random detail. It's designed to cause the most possible damage to our food production. When farmers can't plant their crops or they can't harvest what they've grown, the food supply collapses and people become dependent on somebody else to feed them. Just look at the data from Nigeria's Middle Belt. Places like Benue, Plateau, and Nasarawa State, they've seen a massive drop in the amount of food they produce, and it's likely linked to these attacks. These aren't just numbers on a chart. This is millions of people losing their ability to feed themselves and their families. But here's the truly sinister part. The attacks are lesser focused on the most productive farming areas, targeting the small-scale farmers who actually feed this nation. They are being systematically pushed off their land. This isn't a coincidence. It's a deliberate campaign against community-based farming. And the victims aren't just losing their crops for one season. They are losing their farmlands forever. When these communities are forced to flee, their ancestral land is suddenly up for grabs. Families who have farmed the same piece of land for generations are now refugees in their own country. We are also losing something irreplaceable, our traditional seeds. The diverse crop varieties that our ancestors developed over centuries, the ones that are perfectly adapted to our soil, are disappearing. When farmers run for their lives, that agricultural knowledge passed down from parents to child is lost forever. The economic hit goes way beyond the individual farmers. Nigeria is now importing billions of dollars worth of food that we could and should be growing right here. We've gone from a country that could be feeding its neighbors to one that's dependent on imports. And all the while, you see these agricultural modernization programs popping up in the exact same areas where the conflicts are happening. They come in promoting their farming techniques and improved seeds right in the regions where traditional farming has been destroyed by violence. You have to start asking some uncomfortable questions about that timing. What's really telling is what happens after the people are driven out. Suddenly, you see these large-scale agricultural projects moving right into the areas cleared by the violence, bringing with them their new farming methods and genetically modified seeds. And just as our farmers lose everything, guess who shows up with a smile, a bag of GMO seeds, and a promise of modernization? Listen to what this Nigerian farmer said. His words are haunting. He said, "The land where we planted the GMO seeds can no longer grow our local crops, even after 4 years. The land has been destroyed." He called it agricultural colonization, and he's absolutely right. Nigeria is being pushed to become Africa's leader in adopting genetically modified crops. They are promoting GMO cowpea, drought-resistant corn, new cotton varieties, also to us as the solution to our food problems. But when you talk to the farmers who have actually used them, you hear a different kind of story. Farmers have reported devastating results. Instead of getting bigger harvests, their soil has been degraded so badly it can't even grow traditional crops anymore. The land becomes addicted, totally dependent on the specific chemicals and fertilizers that only these big biotech companies sell. What they sold as modernization, farmers on the grounds are calling destruction. And look at the timing. The push for GMO crops lines up perfectly with the displacement of farmers in the conflict zones. As traditional farming communities are wiped out by violence, these development programs come in with their biotech solutions. The areas cleared by conflict become the new testing ground for GMOs. The patent system they use creates a dependency. You can't save GMO seeds to replant next year. You have to buy new ones from the company every single season. This changes farming from a self-sufficient way of life into a business relationship where you are a forever customer of a massive corporation. The business model is cold and clear. Step 1, destroy traditional agriculture using conflict. Step 2, come in afterwards and introduce GMO seeds as the fix. Step 3, create a permanent dependency on corporate seed suppliers. Communities that used to control their own food are now just customers. And get this, Nigeria loses up to 50% of its harvest after it's been picked because of bad roads and a lack of storage. Our problem isn't a lack of miracle seeds, it's a lack of basic infrastructure. But instead of investing in roads and storage, the money is pouring into changing what our farmers grow and how they grow it. International development agencies are pushing this as reconstruction, but these programs always seem to benefit the corporate seed companies, not the actual farming communities. It feels coordinated. It feels like the conflict is creating the business opportunity for agricultural expansion. And as all this is happening, Nigeria's policies are shifting to favor huge commercial farms over the small farmers who feed the nation. It's a lot easier to acquire large tracts of land when the traditional owners have been chased away by violence. But the most sinister part of this whole thing isn't just stealing our resources or controlling our food. It's how they are using social media to turn us against each other while they rob the country blind. So how do you keep this whole sick system going? They turn us against each other online. Social media is the new battlefield. You have research projects like HERDPhobia that have tracked thousands and thousands of hateful anti-Fulani posts spreading across Nigerian social media. At the exact same time, you have millions of dollars pouring in from Western evangelical groups to push this Christian persecution story. What's the goal? It's simple. Keep Nigerians busy fighting each other so we don't notice them walking out the back door with our wealth. The way they run these online campaigns is incredibly sophisticated. The algorithms on these platforms are designed to push the most extreme inflammatory content to the top of your feed. A post about religious war will get insane engagement, while a calm, balanced discussion about resource extraction gets buried. The social media companies make a profit from our anger, while our communities pay the price in blood. The diaspora plays a huge role in this too. You have Nigerian Christians living in America or Europe who see these posts about persecution back home and they share them, but they often don't have the full context of what's happening on ground. Their genuine fear and anger get weaponized by organizations with a political agenda. And again, look at the timing. The spike in this persecution content always seems to happen around major political events, especially when Nigeria takes an independent stand on something. That speech on Palestine, it triggered a massive coordinated surge in Christian genocide content across every platform in Nigeria. But here's what the social media warriors never talk about. Both Christians and Muslims are being killed. The victims have two things in common. They are almost always poor farmers, and they live on mineral-rich land. They are in the way of the money. Religion is just the cover story. The real motive is economics. All this anti-Fulani hate speech creates an incredibly dangerous environment for every pastoralist community. So, whether they are involved in conflict or not, an entire ethnic groups get blamed for violence that's actually being driven by the greed for resources. It's classic scapegoating, and it serves the people who profit from all this division. Even our own media get caught up in it. Analysis shows a systematic bias towards reporting that escalates the conflict because it gets more clicks. The journalists know it's inflammatory, but the pressure is there. The result is news coverage that just pours gasoline on the fire. It becomes a vicious circle. Stories designed to get a reaction from foreign audiences get shared back into Nigeria, and they start influencing how we see ourselves and our neighbors. The evidence is overwhelming. The real question is, what happens when we wake up to this manipulation? What can we do to finally break free? So, here we are. The choice is pretty clear. We can keep fighting these fake religious wars that only make foreign corporations rich, or we can unite. We can stand together to protect our resources, our farmers, and our country. And that choice has to be made right now. We absolutely have the power to break this circle. The very first step is to see the game for what it is, to recognize that these religious and ethnic conflicts are designed to serve outside interests, not our own. When we fight each other, they get rich and we get funerals. To protect our resources, we need community control. Instead of letting illegal mining fund violence, imagine if we set up community-owned mining cooperatives where the profit go back to the local people. Countries like Ghana have already shown that this can work, that mining can create development instead of debt. To protect our food, we need to support our small-scale farmers, not replace them with big corporate mega farmers. Our traditional farming systems have been feeding us for centuries. They are sustainable and adapted to our land. Our agricultural diversity is a strength, not something to be erased by GMO mega corporations. We also have to get smarter about the information war. We need to teach ourselves and our kids how to spot manipulation online, how to see the way algorithms are used to divide us. A community that knows it's being played can refuse to play the game. And our journalists have a huge role. We need conflict-sensitive reporting. Instead of chasing clicks by escalating tension, our media could be a force for understanding and for finding solutions. That means we, the audience, have to demand better, more responsible reporting. Ultimately, we need African-led solutions. We can't keep waiting for interventions from the same people who benefit from our problems. Our own Pan-African institutions need to step up with conflict resolutions that actually tackles the root causes. The resource theft, not just the symptoms. Imagine if we, West African nations, work together to protect our own resources instead of competing against each other for scraps from foreign investors. The stakes here are higher than just Nigeria. This same playbook is being used all across Africa. Create conflict, steal resources in the chaos, take over the food supply with biotech, and keep everyone divided. But when we finally understand the game, we can change the rules. Unity around protecting our land, our food, and our minds is the key. It could transform not just Nigeria, but the entire continent. Now, if you have watched to this point, this is Frontline Africa, where we talk about geopolitics from Africa's own point of view, where we bring the stories that mainstream media does everything to avoid. In this matter, it's a serious matter. They are trying to push this religious war narrative. They are trying to push this Christians versus Muslims narrative in Nigeria. But I can tell you, the violence happening in Nigeria has nothing to do with religion. It has nothing to do with Muslims against Christians. This violence kills Christians and it also kills Muslims. So go to the comment section and drop your opinion. Tell us what you think about religious war and genocide, this genocide narrative against Christians in Nigeria. And if you want to see more of my content, maybe consider to subscribe and turn on those notifications. I am your host, Ezekiel Enejeta, and I will see you in the next one. It's a bye-bye for now.